Hey people, Doc again. Bit of a problem with the bike this time. I ride a Virago 535 and it seems that I've got a seal gone on one of the forks. I'm weeping some oil. So I've got to do a seal change and an oil change on the forks. There's not many videos around about that, so I thought I'd make my own and see what you think. Please watch and enjoy. Hope it helps. Okay, so here we are. We got the bike. As you can see, it's only a small shed, so I'm limited for space at the moment. But you can see now that we've got the bike securely jacked up on the lift. Front wheel is nice and free. And that's the offending fork just there. You can see there's some weeping going on and it is worse around the back. You can see the oil just trickling out. So that's the actual seal we're going to change. But as with any good repair, it is advisable to do both seals at the same time. Just for your safe, you know yourself, both sides are done. Right, so the tools you're going to need are a socket set or a set of spanners and some Allen keys. You're going to need a 10mm socket, a 12mm, a 19, a 14mm spanner or shallow socket, and a 6mm Allen key. So that's all we're going to do. Is we'll make a start stripping down, then I'll run through things as we go, just to let you know. I have to excuse the shakiness because I am trying to do this one-handed. So the 6mm Allen key, basically that's going to undo your pinch bolt first of all, like that. Just crack him off. You haven't got to unwind it too much. Simple turn, just crack him off, loosen him up, then you're ready to undo the axle bolt. Pull through, catching any spacers on the other side. Take the wheel away, then we're ready to have a look at the caliper on the other side. We'll do that and then we'll have a look. Okay, so I've got the 19mm socket on the end. I'm going to crack the axle bolt off and just keep winding him till you feel it totally free. There. Now I know that axle bolt is ready to pull out. So all we're going to do is we're going to straighten up the wheel. And this can be a two-handed job. So I'm going to pull the axle bolt out, catching the spacer on the disc side, and then we'll have a look from there. Okay, that's it. Front wheel is off. We've caught any spacers, make sure they're safe. I've taken the pads out. The pads are quite thin now, so I've bought a replacement set ready to go back in once we change the seals anyway. So we'll show you that as they go back in. The mudguard will be, I've raised my mudguard because I put a slightly taller tyre on, but it would only be a 13mm bolt there and there. Mudguard comes off and obviously the cable carrier with it. But next we're going to take off these two bolts holding the caliper, and then I'm going to suspend the caliper up out of the way on a bungee cord so it's nice and safe, no kinking of the cables or the pipe, and then we'll go from there. Okay, mudguard's off, hanger hooked over for the speedo cable just to keep that out of the way so everything's nice and tidy. So next thing is caliper bolts, and undo the bottom one, crack him off, undo the top, crack him off. I have pre-loosened these, so these are not usually this slack. I've just done it so that I can use one hand. So I'm just going to undo the bottom caliper bolt and take him out. Now it's always handy, I always use a little magnetic tin. You can pick these up for a couple of £. Ideal idea. Just drop your bolts in there, everything's safe, you know where they are, you're not going to lose any specialist bolts. Save yourself a lot of money. So to take the top bolt out is a two-handed job because I've made a little hanger that's going to hook under the pipe, and then I'm going to hook it up over the indicator, just so I can hang the caliper out of the way so it's safe. I'm not pulling or twisting on any of the pipelines, so I'm not going to damage them. So I'll just nip that bolt out by hand, put him up under the hanger, and then we can carry on with the removal of the forks. Right, we're in the workshop now. This is the actual fork leg where the seal has gone. The phone will focus. You can see the oil where it's been weeping. It's on the leg, the stanchion itself as well. So this seal has gone. The seal there, that's just a dust seal. I lift that up so you can see the main fork seal in a minute. But what I've also done is I've taken off the rubber dust cover from the very top of the fork leg, and that's inside, that's the top of the fork spring seal, and then just in there you've got a ring circlip that has to be popped out, but as the actual spring is being depressed down. It's a nightmare to do. There's no way I can do it one-handed whilst filming, so what I'll do is I'll get that popped out, strip the fork leg down, and then you can see the component parts. There is another bolt which needs removing before you can strip out the spring, and that is, you need to remove the pinch bolt for the axle bolt, and also down inside there you can just make out there's an Allen bolt which runs up inside the fork leg and holds on to the damper. Now it's an absolute nightmare to crack that Allen head. There is a special tool which reaches down inside and holds the other end. I don't have one, so I'm trying sheer luck that I can crack him off and sort him out. Okay, finally we've got the fork disassembled, so I can show the component parts. It's a nightmare to strip a fork down. It's not technical, it's just time consuming. So these are the main components. You've got your main fork body, you've got your inner fork tube, obviously the fork spring, and then you've got several rubbers and clips which you need to keep in order. As you take them off, lay them on your bench and place them in order as you're taking them off. That way when you go to refit you can't go wrong. The problem I had was with, at the end of the inner fork tube you have a damping rod. Now this sits underneath the bottom of the spring and rides up and down in the oil. This little collet fits inside like that, but then the main problem I had was the retaining nut. Again, make sure you keep this copper washer and either replace it with a new one or make sure it's in good repair and reuse, because that's what's going to seal at the bottom of your fork leg. The actual damping rod isn't held inside the top fork tube apart from friction, so as you try and undo that nut this could turn, which it did on me. There is a special tool you can buy, but I suppose it's stupidly expensive. So what I ended up doing was basically making a cone shaped tube out of an old brush handle, metal brush handle, that I could wedge down through the inner fork leg, holding the damping rod, stop it from turning while I cracked this nut off with the Allen key on a socket. I've drained the oil, and as you can see, I think these fork legs were more than due for a change. That's horrendous. If you never change your oil in your forks, you're not going to know it's that black, but believe me, they need doing. So these are the old seals. This was just a dust seal, that's just to keep it clean. Then you've got your main inner seal, which, as you can see, it needed changing bad. I've broke a little bit of the seal prizing it out, but it's been gone. The main capture ring is okay. I'll be replacing both rubber seals, and then on top, this goes on to the end in here, you've got a little rubber O-ring around your cap. Make sure again that's in good repair, and then the whole lot is held in place. That's the little round circlip that I was talking about. You've got to put pressure down on the spring in order to pop this out of its little seat in the top, and it is a nightmare to do. Luckily I had my wife to help me. If you haven't got anybody else, good luck. So I'm going to strip, clean, start to refill with oil, then I'll show you how to check the measurement of oil in the fork leg to make sure you have the right amount. Right, so I've rebuilt the entire fork leg now with new seals. I've not put the dust caps on yet. I'm not ready for that, but I'm ready to fill with oil. I'm holding the leg in a vise nice and safe and secure, because you've got to tip oil in and take measurements as well. So again, it can be a two-handed job. But again, I recommend you use a good brand fork oil. I'm using 10 weight, which is a medium viscosity. You can get a smaller 5 weight, which will give you more travel on the front forks, or a 15 or a 20 weight, which will give you a heavier rebound on the forks. But always use a good recommended brand. Again, I recommend, if you haven't already got one for your bike, you buy a Haynes manual specific to your model and make and year. Unquestionably, they'll save you hundreds, if not thousands of pounds, just by doing little servicing jobs yourself. What you're going to need in there is check on the suspension and steering. Read down the list and check your fork oil level. Now for me on this 535, it states 175 millimeters oil level, which means the way I always do it, I've got a slide-in rule, a slide-in square, just a carpenter's square, and I set that to 176, sorry, not 175. Then I'll tip in some oil, a little bit at a time, and every now and again, this has got to be done with the fork leg fully compressed, without the spring in, and the inner fork fully pushed down as far as it'll go. Once you've put a little bit of oil in, take your square, drop your square down inside till it stops, take it back out. If there's no oil on the square, tip it a little bit more in, do the same again, drop it down in, take it out, check for oil. Now what you want to do, you want to get a little bit of oil just on the bottom edge of the steel rule. You can use a steel rule, you can use a tape measure, whatever you need to measure that depth, again, which is specific to each bike. On this 535, the book says 176 mil. So I'll put in some oil, then we'll take a measurement, and then we'll have a look at that, okay? Right, so just finished putting the oil in now, and we'll have a check. Always make sure the end of your steel rule or your square is nice and dry. Drop him in. Pick him back up. And as you can see, I've just got a little, if I can focus in on that, just got a little dribble of oil on the end of the steel rule, so that means that there's enough oil to the correct level. So what it means then is spring back in, end cap with the circlip, and then the rubber dust bung, and that's the oil change with new seals in the forks. Once you've done that and you've put them back together, just give them a spring or two on the floor by hand just to settle them in. Then it's a reverse of when we took it out to the bike, exactly the same, just in reverse.